Okay, welcome back to Influx Data Gambit Chess Tournament. We have Shmuel versus Sahas. And Shmuel's username here is off to the gulag with you. And apparently there's a story behind that. When he was in school for chess, he's gone to chess school, and his chess teacher would tell him if he got the wrong move that he would send him off to the gulag. So tough teacher. Um, let's see how the game goes. Oh, and I also have to introduce my new co-host, Joel.
Hello, everybody.
And let's check out this game. So we sort of have like a French defense, sort of a French exchange.
Frenchish, yeah.
Yeah, normally with the French, I mean, normally you expect white to play, e4, d4 here, trying to take control of the center, but uh, Shmuel plays a little bit differently here. This is black develops a bishop, tries to pin the knight. If white doesn't block the pin, black can take the piece and kind of bust up white's pawn structure a little bit. It's not overly detrimental, but maybe not desirable. So white doesn't indeed block the pin. Black developing the last knight here, preventing black from being able to castle, so black's able to castle in the next move here. And white kicks out the bishop, making it choose between whether or not it's going to back up or go ahead and take the piece. And I would say usually you don't want to make that exchange.
No, you want to keep the bishop pair if you can. The bishop pair is stronger than two knights.
Yeah, exactly. One exception to that is maybe when the knight controls center squares that are really important to you, and you can take advantage of that right away. Um,
With chess, there are always exceptions, but by and large, if you can keep both bishops, it tends to be a little bit better than.
yeah, agreed. And then white goes ahead and chases the bishop out. Now the bishop is attacking this pawn. This pawn's not defended because normally the queen was guarding it, but the queen can't see it through the bishop directly here. So the bishop moves, adding double guard of the pawn.
I would have liked the knight development better.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think
I agree with that.
I think that way you haven't wasted time moving your bishop twice, and it gets you ready to castle kingside a bit faster.
Yeah, agreed. We get knight, putting more pressure on the pawn, perhaps. It's already defended twice though, so it's not going to go down easy. Maybe now the knight move is a good choice, and we see it. Black castles early.
That's still a better developing square for the black queenside knight, though, because d7 really has no good squares. If you develop here to d7 instead, all these squares are covered. So
Yeah,
even if that puts pressure on a piece that you can't take, it's still a better square to control.
yeah. And the problem with developing the knight to d7 was that you block in the bishop as well. So now the light squared bishop can't come out. Can't seem to draw an arrow in the right direction. Okay. Probably this move I don't really like. Black's castled already. White's moves the bishop for a third time and should probably develop the light squared bishop so that you can castle.
I agree with that, but I don't think that's a bad square for the bishop. The pin on the g6 knight is pretty strong. It tends to give I've at least found, especially in faster timer games, that pin tends to give people trouble because your f6 knight controls a lot of central squares. So I feel like if white had brought the knight out instead and this was the bishop's second move, I wouldn't mind it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it does create a little bit of problems. The dark bishop is over on the side. You can't easily break that pin. Maybe the queen comes to d6 here to kind of guard the knight from the side. Um, Problem
But
is
then you
this.
have to be careful when you move the queen off of the d file, the d5 pawn. Now, like if you move to say e7, you've still got the pin, but now your d pawn's hanging.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you can make use of that check on the king to gain some initiative here. Maybe make another move with the queen. I'm not really sure. But
Or bishop e6 or something. Yeah, just I just think you shouldn't downplay the value of that pin. That pin is definitely helpful.
right, right. Yeah, even queen to d6 has the problem where the knight can jump to b5 and then kick the queen out again, causing some problems. And then I'm not sure where you go from there, but maybe that check still is okay. But yeah, the pin is definitely uncomfortable. Black being castle gets a check in early. Now white's got to maybe block it with the bishop and hope to still keep castling rights here.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting.
And now we have a pin going the other way, and the bishop is less effective guarding this piece because the king's behind it. So you kind of forcing castling here because otherwise we're going to see something like bishop takes and the pawn's going to have to take back, and it's not going to be a happy place. Your king's going to lose its
Castling seems pretty mandatory right here.
yeah. Oh, yeah, we
Yep.
see it. And now attacking the bishop, trying to force it to take the knight or choose a place to go back to. I guess we still got two attackers on the pawn, so maybe going back to d2 doesn't work very well, blocking the queen's defense of the d4.
Yeah, I definitely like h4 better here for the bishop, and that makes black decide if they really want to break that pin and play g5, then weaken their kingside pawns. They get that option, but then as white, you get some counterplay as a result.
Yeah, if I'm white here, I'd love to see g5 come. So king's gonna have a hard time. The sacrifice I don't like as much. I think it's a little premature. You know, I play this a lot, but normally the queen is behind it, and I at least want to get two pawns for that bishop and break open the king side. So I feel like it's a little too aggressive.
I'd agree with that. I like piece play personally, so I would much rather keep my pieces on the board, unless I see something really special.
Yeah. Okay, so we've bishop going to pin the knight over here. That does kind of strengthen the pin on the opponent's pin on our knight. And yeah, when asked to decide, we decide to switch, and the idea might be to weaken these squares. Maybe,
I'm
yeah,
not sure. I feel like the bishop sacrifice matched with the other bishop play feels like there isn't a master plan. You
hmm
know, like if the plan was to attack on the king side, you shouldn't have switched to the king queen side play. If you were going to make that queen side play, you should have kept your king side bishop. They don't go together well for me.
yeah, makes sense. So we now taking here is maybe tempting because the bishop's slightly better than the knight. The bishop's providing a little bit of pressure on this pawn, but at the same time you're going to straighten out your opponent's doubled pawns, which I think it brings you closer to the end game, but it doesn't necessarily help your position at all.
Yeah, but you don't want to get closer to an endgame. You're white. You sacrificed a piece for a pawn. You don't want to get rid of your pieces. You want to keep them on the board and make an attack. So I
Yeah,
would be a little bit surprised if it was a trade and not NC5.
right. Knight c5, heading to a stronger square here, maybe forcing the bishop to trade.
At least then you get a little bit of an attack on the queen. Give yourself maybe an open B file. Put your rook behind there if you wanted to try and attack on the queen side. Give you a little bit more play.
Yeah. I think the whole point of sacrificing the bishop here is to weaken the kingside structure. So White should probably just focus on getting the pieces over to the king side, getting an attack going on the king side.
No, I agree. Even something like Queen D2 would work. Like, yes, they could force a trade on F3, but you attack that knight, that H pawn, which is now undefended and kind of hard to defend, or at least it would have been if you'd done it a little bit earlier, before the queen had a chance to come out, because the knight can't move to defend it, and other pieces are kind of tangled. And at least then you get your second pawn for that piece.
Yeah, maybe the knight can move away for the queen to defend the pawn, but yeah, also the knight has to maybe even knight over to h7 here, but
Yeah, at this point, yes.
yeah. Okay, so we do see a queen move. This diagonal is maybe a little less effective because there isn't a spot to really hop into the action here. All these squares are covered.
Oh, my first instinct is that this is just to break the pin on F3.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Now, if bishop takes, the queen can take back, uh, and if the bishop doesn't take, you've at least prepared that to move the knight out of the
Knight
way
to
somewhere.
E5, probably take that nice big central square. You've got a pawn behind you. You put a little bit of pressure on C6, which is defended, but by a queen at least. And you have ideas of being able to play C4 and then C5 and try and get some stuff going on the inside.
Yeah, e5 here is a very strong square. Nothing can immediately kick you out of there. You don't really want to trade the rook off for it, so good choice. Black has a similar idea, taking central space. And you got to ask yourself what is he threatening when he makes that move. At the moment, everything's covered, but that that's a strong square. Maybe rerouting the knight back or to one of these squares and trying to put some pressure back on that knight to trade off the strong piece.
Yeah, I don't mind NC5. If I was going to pick one of those two squares, that's the one I'd pick. But I'd much rather play NE5 here. Get your other knight out of your kingside knight into that nice big central square. You hit the bishop, so he can't play F6 right away. It gives you time to figure out what to do next, because then you can see where he puts that bishop.
Yeah.
You could even, if he plays back to H5, you could even play G5 directly, and start throwing stuff at Black's king. If that's NE5, bishop H5, and then G5,
G4. After bishop h5, what would you play?
So then you play G4, hitting the bishop with
Yeah,
pawn. Pawn's
because
defended by the knight,
defended
which
by
you
the
just
knight.
move. And then that bishop needs to move again.
Probably fall back.
Yeah, so now at that point you can either play F4 and just start a straight up attack on the king side.
Yeah.
Or you can take with the knight from E5 and then play F4 afterwards. Like, you have some options there. But
Yeah.
the point being, you opened up the king side, you made him weak, you took away that pawn that's covering the king. Let's just throw stuff at it and see if we can make something work.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the king side attacks.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see knight e5 here. It's good choice. And bishop takes, and this is probably not worth it for black. Queen can just recapture here. I guess the idea is now the knight's lost an important defender. So this is a good find. I've changed my opinion.
Totally missed it too. Well, I would still take on G4 here. The rook's gonna fall, but you have other options. You're gonna take it back. You already lost the exchange here. Like, because if you take the bishop, you're gonna lose the knight. So at least let's take out the bishop, make both of his bishops go away.
Yeah. Yeah, knight takes bishop and you've only lost the pawn. The problem is your rook is hanging.
Yeah, but you'll take back.
Yeah, you take back, so you'll be down.
You lose the exchange.
Yeah, you'll be
That's
down.
better than a piece.
Be down 3 points. Great find for sahas. Not an obvious move to see.
Yeah, the undermining was really good find.
And we do see captures here. Bishop takes, rook takes, and yeah, I guess sahas now up 2 points. Threatening the knight, maybe keeping an eye on the square behind it here. Um, the queens see each other through this knight, and so the first thing I think of here is like, can this knight move with any checks? Um, there's nothing major here because both queens are defended, but yeah, it could be interesting. You'll have to move this knight somewhere. White's other knight is on the side of the board, um, so black's doing a little bit better here. It's a very nice idea for defending the knight and attacking the other knight at the same time. Knight drops back, and queen moves out of the attack. Now both the queen and the knight are eyeing this h6 pawn. Black might have to play something like king h7 to defend it, or maybe knight f5.
Yeah, knight f5 seems more flexible to me. Can't really kick it out very easily, and it buys you a bunch of time to say get your rooks into play.
Yeah, we see king h7. And now I like this move. Knight c5, finally getting that outpost square. Very, very handy square, and getting the knight back into the game. It was not doing much on the side of the board there.
Yeah, this also discourages any sort of like f5 move to kick out the white knight, because if black plays f5 here, then the white knight can actually move to e6 without worrying about the pawn attack. So black's going to have to spend a little bit more time worrying about that knight.
Except the white knight can't get to
No,
e6.
the white knight on c5.
Yeah. Okay.
So you don't want that knight getting to that square at any point. So, but in this kind of position, you might want to play something like f5, kick the white knight out. Your king's already doesn't have a lot of defenders. That pawn's not doing much on f7. So it's another benefit of having a knight on c5.
Yeah, I definitely like that knight. Okay, so we move over. I mean, this puts a lot of pressure on this knight. This knight can't move, and so this is, it's not definitive because it's defended. An idea like pushing the pawn here looks good, but I'm not sure it does much. The knight can move out of the way because the queen's still defending it. But maybe if you can pair that with the move attacking the queen, trying to distract it.
Well, there's also, this could just be a preparatory move. You could get rook g7 and then the other rook at a to g8. You really line up on the file.
Yeah.
And then that's is that Alekine's gun, or is Alekine's gun with the queen behind? I can never remember.
I never thought of it as being different. I just think you line up a bunch of queen and a bunch of rooks.
If you get both rooks and the queen on a line facing a king, it's got to be good for you.
Yeah, it's probably Alekine's gun. Okay, we see a knight move here. Not really sure what this accomplishes. Maybe just an idea to reroute and put some pressure on the queen.
Yeah, that was my thinking too, and which then puts pressure on c6. But I think it's just kind of slow. Like, black's got a lot going on here, and I don't think white can take this time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't like this move because I thought the doubling up the rooks was a good plan. So the king kind of gets in the way here.
And the king can't even keep going.
Sorry, I lost the position here. We'll just get back to it. So I think what black was afraid of was playing one of the knights to f6, and it'd be defended by the other knight, and it would be a fork on the king and rook. So I think the idea of moving the king was just to remove the fork, although I probably just would have moved the king back into the corner there. I guess the problem with moving the king into the corner is it undefends the h6 pawn. So you're kind of stuck either way there.
Yeah, that's why rook g7 works better. Rook g7 takes away the pin or takes away the fork because now the rook's not there to be forked anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
you could still play the fork, push the king into the corner, and then capture on h6.
it's
Um,
true. I'm, I'm trying to think in my head whether or not playing rook a to g8 at that point is so much pressure that even if you had to give something up, it might be worth it. Because remember, black here is staring down the white queen, the white king,
yeah,
and if you get checkmate, that's it. Like nothing else really matters. So um, the only thing that's defending g2 right now is that queen on d2, and if you need to come out to get the knight, like you could even construct a situation here where I think you could play knight takes g6, queen takes g6, queen takes g6, and then it could still be better for black. Probably not quite here, but like that's something I would worry about if I was white. Like I don't want to leave myself too defenseless.
g6 being this far.
Yeah, I think I said that all right. Regardless, I'm just looking at I'm looking at this at these two pieces, and
Yeah,
they're staring down g2,
yeah,
and this knight is in the way, and it's true the knight and the queen are attacking this pawn, but you can't do too much because if knight takes, now all of a sudden the file's open. Um, and
yeah,
that opening that file in the right spot might well be worth a pawn.
yeah. I think the you know if it was if I was white here and my opponent played g7, I'd play knight f6, kick the king back, and then I'd take with the queen. And then if the queen takes, uh, I guess I think what happens is black doesn't have enough pieces left on the file to immediately attack. Um, and if the queen doesn't take and the king tries to run, you take the queen and you kind of diffused a lot of that pressure. Um, the only problem with this whole plan is you only win a pawn, um,
And you
and
simplify.
yeah, a lot of the pieces come off the board. You're still down a pawn for the endgame, and you don't necessarily have a great chance of turning it around.
Yeah.
But after this move, a lot of the pressure on g2 is off. The king's in the way. Black has got a few moves to sort their pieces out to get that attack going back.
Yeah. I think another important thing to note here is after the king's at g7, the king can't actually keep going.
Yep.
These two squares are covered by the knight on d7. So you didn't really like if the f8 square wasn't covered, right? The knight was say on d5 or something, so it covered just f6 but not d8, not f8. You could run to f8 and get around. That would be a lot better. But since your king can't get out here, you're going to feel pretty tangled.
Yeah, yeah. It's this is a small victory by white. They've managed to get black to worsen their position. Check here, and blocked by the pawn. That pawn is attacked 3 times, only defended twice by the king and the queen. So you could consider capturing it, maybe with a knight move.
Yeah, that was the knight I was looking at too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, black getting a rook out of the attack and putting some more pressure on it.
So I wonder if white's going to find knight e8, double check. Anytime I can see it, I see a spot where you can play one move to check in 2 different ways. It's almost always a good plan because the queen checks when you move the knight with a discover check, and the knight checks also. So that makes the king have to run. And when the king runs, king has very few options right here. F7, you get a fork on e5 from the other knight against the queen. The black squares are covered, so you can't go to h8. So you're really low on squares right now.
Yeah, definitely. And if you go to any of those other two squares, the other knight can come in with a check, and
Yeah.
it's not definitive, but it's going
It's
to
a
be
lot of red
uncomfortable.
squares right around black's king.
Yeah, exactly. The black king is going to be forced to move back onto one of these dark squares again. Actually, not going to be able to use the G7 square because the knight will be on E8. So king's going to be forced back into the corner, and now you're going to have another double check. But maybe this one, comes with an attack on the rook or something. I don't know. It's not going to be good.
I'm not sure what's optimal at that point, but
Nope,
definitely
that was not the
if you
move.
play those double checks.
Okay, so we have a revealed check, and white chooses to win a pawn here. Um, so good move. This is the second pawn, so this makes the game even again. Materials equal after this move. King moves.
Well, let's see if white sees it. There's a deadly blow. Yep.
And 95, and that's that ends the game here because 95, the king moved into a double attack here, so there we go. And it's in this position that Sahas resigns because no matter where you go with your king, you're going to lose your queen, and you're going to be 9 points down. It's going to be hard to continue. There's also like a lot of attacking going on around your king. That weakening of the king side early in the game turned out to be pretty advantageous later on. Okay, let's try to go to game 2 here. See if I can load a new position. Do you want to look at anything else before we go on?
I'm turning on the evaluator to see whether the computer thinks that knight d5 check was better, or whether the computer liked the double check on e8. Right now, it's actually liking the pawn check better, but I'm curious what happens when you get into that line. Interesting. So you can't. It turns out you can't bring in the second knight because then the king can escape through f7, through e7, and actually get out. So you end up kind of repeating moves. And actually, the computer line has just taking with the rook. So it still says white's better there, but it actually thinks taking the pawn was the right play.
Okay, very good. All right, let's try. I'm gonna clear the board and see if I can load a position here. Set position. Okay, do you see the new new game?
Play, yep.
Okay. Okay, so this is game 2. They've switched colors, and we have a Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit accepted. The pawn has no immediate defender, and I think the idea is to play e4, taking control of the center and attacking that pawn, trying to win it back.
That's the line I like. I think nf3 and e3 are also both playable.
Okay.
But I always like d4. I feel like it puts the pressure on right away.
Yeah, I think you don't want to give black too much time to mount a defense for that pawn.
Yeah, just if you play e4 directly and they respond with nf6, like there can be a bunch of counterplay. So sometimes playing e3 can work out a little bit better.
Okay, neither side in any hurry to retrieve that pawn.
Well, if he doesn't play e3 here, he's not going to get it back.
Okay, maybe just playing on initiative. I mean, already White has 3 pieces developed, just ignoring that pawn. So, for the cost of the pawn, they've got a lot of activity. And I would say, dropping back is probably the right move here. I
I
don't,
agree.
I don't think. I mean, you sacrifice a pawn to get all this activity, and if you take it now, you'll move the bishop twice, and um, and then it's off the board. So queen move attacks b2, also eyeing the d4 pawn.
I like knight a4 here for white. It defends the pawn on b2. It also attacks the queen on b6. And it gives you opportunities to, depending on where the queen goes, move the knight again to c5, which is a lot of knight moves, but suddenly black now has to defend against that knight. And if they just play something like b6, you're going to get them to move their pawn again once you've actually moved that e-pawn. But boy, I wish we'd gotten that e-pawn moved first.
Yeah, exactly. And knight a4 now is sort of a free move because it comes with the tempo of attacking on the queen. The queen's got to move, so it's not it's not really a cost to move it a second time there. So we have queen d2 defending the pawn that way. This maybe puts it in range of the knight now. So now it's black who can grab a tempo and developing move, I guess.
Well, your
Maybe not
c3 knight covers that square.
because you're it's still covered, right? This is true.
But it certainly is something to think about. I think e6 would probably be a nice solid move for black here. Open up a little bit, get yourself some so you can put the bishop on, make that pin, because there's a lot of things lined up on that diagonal right now. And then black can look to castle and just try to move a little bit slowly. You've got an advantage of a pawn, so just play some solid moves and let the game develop.
Yeah, makes sense. And we see it. Good call. This is good. Finally, we got our e3 move, putting some pressure on the c4 pawn, and hard to defend in this position.
It makes it kind of difficult to defend now.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. You kind of want to kick this out, but black can just sort of stick around here.
Yeah, that's why I was looking at knight e5.
Yeah.
Gives another attack. The next easy defender for the c pawn is to play b5, move your other pawn up to defend, but now your queen is even more cut off. Yeah. And your c6 pawn feels kind of weak. Your knight on b8 is tied down to defending it. It just feels like at that point black's got a bunch of liabilities. They have a pawn for it, but they have a bunch of liabilities to deal with.
Yeah, a lot of times when you're playing Queen's Gambit Accepted, you'll take the pawn, but then have zero plans about capturing it back. You'll just when white attacks it, you're just going to give it back and focus on development. You can see how black's pieces could start to get a little scrambled here, trying to hold on to this pawn. Plus, yeah, that b5 move connects the pawns, but like you said, makes a backwards pawn in the back here, and I start to get nervous anytime the queen doesn't have a lot of free space around it like this.
Yeah.
Preparing castling. Yeah, I'm not sure what that move does.
I see it as just like a developing move. I think the other bishop would be better though, to get yourself ready to castle. Your bishop still doesn't. I mean, the only square it can move is where it came from. So
yeah,
and I don't think you can afford to play c5 directly here.
Yeah, and
if you could, that might be a little different, but I don't think that works. The idea being, if you could push that pawn, then all of a sudden your bishop is now open and has a couple of other squares to get into the game. But.
Yeah, that's definitely an idea. Um, yeah, I think because white played a passive move, black has time to also play a passive move, and nothing's
Yeah,
too
and if it had
threatened.
been bishop b7, I would have said, yeah, great. Like we're planning a castle. Quiet move's fine.
Yeah, white castles, black develops, preparing castling, and we have guarding the rook here, or the rook guarding the knight. Um, both these pawns still defended, so black can't really do anything there.
I mean, that's a good file to put a rook on. When you've played Queen's Gambit as white, you often want to put a rook on c1, um, especially when they've accepted, because you're gonna end up wanting to take that file and run with it. So
Yeah, when this knight moves, the rook is going to add an attacker to the c4 square. So, you're indirectly attacking c4. And now we see that pawn move defending it, and black's kind of committed to the weak pawn on c6. This seems like a waiting move.
yeah, that feels like just one of those moves where it's like I'm not sure what to do next, so I'll give my king a square and not worry about back rank mate later or something.
Yeah,
Stop. I don't think knight g4 is a real threat, but you need to stop it. I would have liked a3 a little bit better, but
yeah. This is a bold move. I thought black was going to castle on this side, and now the pawns in front of the king are open again. That didn't work out well for black last game, but I guess we'll have to see. And we see c4 or c5. I mean,
because that's a lot of pawn moves all at once. Now your king is committed to the center of the board, so you're committed to keeping at least a couple of pieces there to defend.
yeah. Dark square bishop finds a new pin.
That's a good square, but I might have put the knight there instead. We wind that back for a second.
Yeah,
I'm just wanted to think about putting the knight there because that attacks the bishop on d7. And it also gives you the opportunity to take your own bishop on e2, put it on f3, and then get into the game by attacking on the long diagonal against a8.
yeah.
Which then really that makes your light squared bishop much more active. I mean, this is not to say bishop e5 is bad, but sometimes if you can move one piece and help a second piece as well, it tends to work out a little bit better for you long term.
Yeah, definitely trying to do two things at once is what you want to be focused on. So yeah, this does the one thing of adding the pin, but black comes in and attacks it right away. Bishop moves a second time, and we've got pawn captures here. Looks like it's just a trade. I like this move. Lining up the queen and the rook together, keeping an eye on this bishop. It's defended, and if the king ever does decide to try and castle, it loses a defender.
But that knight can be pinned pretty easily with bishop to e5, and the e5 square is only covered by the knight that you're currently attacking. So this is the problem with trying to defend your king with a bunch of pieces. Like it can get hairy pretty quick.
Yeah. These could go flying off the board really quickly. Attacking the bishop.
Like I'd look if I was white right here, I would look pretty hard at whether I can take on c6 with the knight. To uncut so that I can now move my bishop back to e5. And by taking with the knight immediately, black has to defend because that knight capture also attacks the queen on b4, which makes it like the priority threat. Now your queen and king are staring right down. Your queen and rook, excuse me, are staring right down the d file, and you can get a bonus pin. Like that's what I'd be looking at. The question is there anything better than that?
Yeah, it definitely looks strong. So we see it.
All right.
And Queen moves back to attack the bishop. Wasn't doing much on the corner of the board, so this kind of centralizes it. And yeah,
Keeps the pin. It's a
yeah.
move.
There's no immediate, or maybe there is. Maybe this might be a problem. Like, what about bishop takes here?
Yeah.
It'd be a blunder to take back with the bishop because the queen would lose its guard. So the only move if after takes is queen takes here. Um,
Then you can move on and take the rook on h8 with the
can,
bishop.
can you take?
And bishop takes that rook, and then if
What
queen
about?
takes that rook, you recapture and you won a piece.
So in this case, you're winning a knight and a rook for and a queen for a queen and a rook. So yeah, it looks like it's a winning move.
It's hard to spot that in the game, though.
Yeah, white doesn't try it, and this looks like a good capture just because it messes up the pawn structure in front of the king.
That said, the undermining piece capture is still there. You can still take on f6 with the bishop, and it still works fine.
Yeah. And now.
Oh, no, you can't.
Now it doesn't quite work.
Your bishop. Yeah, that's the only square your bishop has that's not covered.
Yeah, the bishop might get trapped here. Now, rook to the corner, and where do you put it?
I think you trade queens then. Rook a8, queen takes.
Yeah.
Bishop takes. Rook takes bishop. Rook takes bishop. Rook takes knight would all work.
Yeah. So black does it for you, and then now your bishop's not quite so trapped. You still got ideas of maybe hiding.
Got options.
Yeah. You can't quite play this, but
No, that's why I was looking at. That's why I was looking at something like knight e4, so that you could prepare that.
Mm-hmm.
That's by putting the knight on e4, then you're attacking the knight on f6, so that it has to.
Yeah.
Move something. All right. Well, now that's
not an option.
Yep.
Here, maybe just I like playing e4.
Oh, that's interesting because I was immediately looking at putting a rook on d6. Hit
Yeah,
the now undefeated knight. Hits the pawn on a6. If the knight's going to have to move to a square that can't cover h6. So there's a whole bunch of things on that file that are, or that rank that are that are not defended.
Yep. I like that. It's just go for it right away. And we see it.
That's the response.
Yes, good response. Yeah, I mean, you could force a trade here, but I don't think it helps you. I think
just take it and put the other rook there. E6 will still be undefended.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we see. And now you can't defend everything, so you drop a pawn, and that even makes material equal for the game. This pin is a little bit annoying, though.
Yeah, I don't think the knight can get over, though, to capitalize.
Yeah.
I think if you play a4 here, you're okay. That would work, too. But I like a4 better. It resolves some of the pawn tension a bit more easily.
I see, yeah. Getting close to the end of the game. I think at this point, players have about 2 minutes each. Knight's trying to get over to this side of the board, threatening a pawn in the process.
I think you have to defend with the rook, which also has the benefit of putting your rook on a dark square so that you can play bishop d5 breaking that pin.
Yeah, exactly. King moving in the opposite direction. I'm not really sure what that's about.
Yeah, that I don't understand.
I think that gives up the pawn too easily. And
well, thankfully, white has a little bit of counterplay. You can take the pawn back on c4, It's unfortunate you moved the king, actually, because if the king was still on f1, that would be safe. If rook takes bishop, then rook takes knight. You've got an even trade. Unfortunately, here, rook takes pawn, and then the knight can play knight to e2 check, which now you have to decide where to go, but
Yeah, maybe
quite as cleanly.
king f1, going back and attacking it again, and you're still okay. In fact, the knight is
But then you
trapped.
have this really weird move of knight to f4, try and get them to triple up pawns or something,
Mm,
uh, which it's not a death blow or anything, but it's harder to play.
yeah.
So here, why don't we walk into that just so
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, sure. So
it's a lot of arrows for people to see.
for sure.
So so
So
then
the,
knight checks here, king comes here, knight comes back. Now you're going to lose the knight. The point is to lose the knight in a spot that's on, like, your pawns are now unpleasant
yeah.
because they're not. You can't take with the rook because this knight is defended by two pawns. So the other option is
Well,
that you.
what about the throwing in a check here? Defending the bishop, king, force the king to move, and after the king moves, you capture.
Yeah.
And now
Okay.
you're accepting the tripled pawns, but
But you got a piece
but
for
you
it.
saved your bishop.
Yeah. That does work out.
So that's a tricky line.
Yeah.
And we got king f1 here, and okay. Uh, yeah, I guess missing the fact that the rook was attacked here. Maybe got too focused on the
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
on the attack on the king, potential attack on the king, and then yeah, knight takes a4, and um, now you just you're kind of stuck. Black's got this passed pawn as an asset. You know, the rook can come behind it. It's probably going to turn into a queen. You're going to have a hard time stopping that.
There's one thing that's even worse than that. That bishop's trapped.
The bishop has no valid moves. Yeah.
All squares the bishop can move to are covered.
The knight covers these
Best you can
two,
do is.
and this pawn covers this one.
Yep.
So
So the last piece is gone. Resigning here is totally fair.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. Um, yeah, so Black wins this one, and I think that means that Shmuel was the winner of both games. Is that what happened?
That sounds right. But honestly, I was so focused on the board, I wasn't paying attention
I
to which
forgot.
was which.
Yes. This was how our first game ended. So
Yeah.
with the fork. So our second game is with the rook loss. Okay, so that means Shmuel will be moving on. I can update the bracket here, I think. Yeah. Okay. I've got it in the bracket. So. Not. Yeah. This isn't easy to see in the screen, but have to adjust my layout. There we go. All right. I guess that's it. See you at the next one.